Good morning. Welcome to the Fort Mill Town Council meeting for Monday, July 27th. We appreciate you joining us this morning. After a call to the order, we will give a pledge to the allegiance, and I will do the invocation. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America,
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Heavenly Father, thank you as we gather here this beautiful morning to do the work of our community. Please guide us in our hearts and in our words and in our actions to do the things that will help your children here on earth. I pray for all those that are sick or are struggling with the issues that we have, and I pray that you would help us make decisions to move forward. In his name we pray. Amen. All right. Council members, you have been provided the minutes of the July 6th and the July 13th Town Council meetings. Does anyone have any changes? Well, first, let me do a check-in. Do I have Chris Moody on the line? No Moody. Okay. I have Trudy on the line. I have Ronnie on the line.
Yes.
Okay. Trudy, can you hear me? Trudy. Trudy. Okay. And then we have Larry, Lisa, and myself. For those of you watching, Jamie cannot be with us this morning. His brother continues to have some issues related to some heart surgery that he had, so he is with him this morning, and we will all say a silent prayer for his brother's rapid recovery. All right. Council members, you have received the minutes for July the 6th, July the 13th. Any changes, deletions, or additions?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Trudy. Okay, Larry, you making a motion?
Approval.
I'll second. I have a motion by Larry and a second by Lisa. Chris Moody, can you hear me? Davey, have you spoken to Chris, or can you tell if he's on the line? He will not? Okay, I didn't know that.
You said that late last night, early this morning.
Okay. So, Trudy, how do you vote? Trudy? Ronnie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Larry?
Approved.
Yeah. Thank you. Lisa?
Vote to approve.
And I also, so that's a vote of 4 to approve. Public comment. Public comments may be submitted in writing to the town clerk via mail, 200 Tom Hall Street, Fort Mill, South Carolina, 29715, or email to vburgess, B-U-R-G-E-S-S, at fortmillsc.gov. When submitting a comment, please include your name and address for the record. All public comments received at least 1 hour prior to the start of the meeting will be presented to Town Council by staff during the information discussion portion of the meeting. Presentations. We'll begin this morning with presentation number 1, the Fort Mill Economic Partners Impact Fee Analysis. Good morning, and please introduce who we have on the line.
Good morning, Mayor Savage. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
This is Leanne Morse. We also have with
yes.
We also have with us David Buse, Dr. Nicholas Molman, and Dr. Louis Pantusco from Winthrop University. We're pleased to be able to come before you this morning. David and Nick will be making our presentation. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background on who we have. Drs. Pantusco and Molman represent Winthrop University in the Department of Accounting, Finance, and Economics, for which Dr. Pantusco is the chair. They are one of our partners on Fort Mill Economic Partners, and they have provided the research that you'll be hearing today. David's going to be present with a PowerPoint that Chris Pettit has and will be running, and then you should also have received a couple, or should have received a couple of other documents. One, a narrative analysis by Winthrop, and the second is a full spreadsheet by Winthrop, which will have all of the data. What you're going to see in the PowerPoint is some abbreviated examples, but all of that data that we're referencing is in that spreadsheet. So I would like to ask, at the end of this, we will all four be available to field your questions, but I will now toss it to David Bust for our presentation.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, and thank you for checking.
This is David Bust of Fort Mill. Appreciate you all having us on this morning. We find it incredibly powerful that the town asked us to help with this. These are unprecedented times. This COVID virus, what it's doing to business and primarily small business, is really terrible. That's not to discount the cost of life and the people that are struggling with illnesses, but it is also very scary what's going on with business in our community. So thank you for allowing us this opportunity to help you with your analysis of this impact fee. I wanted to start off by saying that while Fort Mill is such a desirable area, we have had one of the largest impact fees in the area. I think that we found these past couple of years that the growth of Fort Mill surpassed the demand for growth in the town of Fort Mill surpassed the challenges of having an impact fee, and that's a really good thing. It really tells you this is a good place to be and that the business community supports this town and wants to be here. However, things are changing, and they're changing fast. The barrier to entry for small business has never been greater. The challenges that the small businesses are facing right now is primarily with getting financing and then also getting a particular property to appraise. Impact fees play a crucial role in this because the value of the cost must be spread out over the project. This is also a very significant burden to smaller business that have a smaller project to spread those costs out over. So the barrier for entry is a real challenge for small business. One of the things that I wanted to point out, and we can go to the next slide, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This increase that was passed in early July, the town built in, when they created this impact fee, the ability to change the impact fee at any time when it seemed warranted by the conditions. This is one of those times. This increase is incredibly big, and that 108%, which I'll allow Nick to explain how he got to that number, is a large increase, and there are several small businesses. Can you still hear me?
We have some interference, but yes.
This is a very large increase. This is an increase while the study that Fort Mill did does support the highest fee possible, and you still do have some discounts in place. The current increase from June to July of this year is pretty significant. You can see on that slide there, the average is 108% increase. Next slide, please. Here's some more individual examples. And if you look at the scale on the left here, 0 to 50% is the first line, and then 100% increase. One of the more fascinating things to look at is I take your attention to point to the fast food drive-through, to look at supermarkets, libraries, hotels, all over, well over 100% increases. Next slide, please. And here's some more of those examples that are outlined here. Next slide, please. Well, and these are some smaller use, and you can see that a business park use of 123% is a very significant increase. So is medical and dental. Fort Mill, especially our east side of town still has a great need to fill for medical and dental offices. And that's an incredible impact on those types of restaurants.
Thank you. Did we lose you? Frozen.
I think David we may have lost him. I can pick up here until he's able to reconnect. Is everyone hearing me now?
We can.
The topics that are on the slide presently cover some of our what we call the niche categories, because we don't have the room that Rock Hill does, say, for example, for warehousing and some of those larger footprint items. The ones you see on the screen now are the businesses and types of industry that we generally are trying to bring into Fort Mill. Those are just a few of them. Next slide, please. These are a few of the comparisons showing you these can be found on Dr. Molman's spreadsheet as well. But these are a few of those areas showing their square footage and what their impact fees would be under the old schedule and the new schedule. The first is indicated fast food with a drive-through at a 2,000 square foot facility. You can see that they go from a previous impact fee of $34.63 to $15,442. Theirs was the largest increase. High turnover seated restaurant, general retail, office, and supermarket. It looks like David is back with us, so I'm going to see if he can pick back up.
Hi, I'm sorry about that. I don't know where I went. Hopefully you can hear me again.
We can.
Sorry about that. So Leanne, I heard you addressing these ones, and this is some really good real world examples of thresholds of where you could see particular projects and what those impact fees could be. And these are significant costs. Next slide, please. Interestingly enough, there are two categories that we're showing from the old fee calculator to the new fee calculator that actually went down. I'd like to bring those to your attention only for your information purposes, because we did look at this as a whole, not just individual categories. Next slide, please. The motel category, not the hotel, but the motel category and warehousing both significantly decreased. And we're just bringing that to your attention. Next slide, please. So what are we recommending? And I think it would be safe to say that with everything that's going on in the world, where you have businesses barred to entry raising so fast, so quickly, while at the same time their revenue streams and projected revenue streams are getting impacted by this virus, our hope is the town can take a look at this and use your discounts lever that's built into the ordinance to pull the impact fee cost back to where it was in June of this year. If it becomes warranted over time to again use impact fees or raise impact fees further, you certainly can do that at any time. I think it's important to say that while you could look at it as an applicant by applicant basis, that's really tough when people are doing their due diligence and evaluating projects. We want to reward good businesses that the town wants here without making it a higher barrier to entry. So our recommendation would be that the town consider looking at taking those impact fees back to where they were prior to the July increase. So certainly would love to spin this over to Nick and tell you a little bit about how he crunched the numbers and got you these facts.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Are you all able to hear me right now? We've got some echo on someone's end. Well, thank you. As David said, my name is Nicholas Molman. I'm an assistant professor of economics at Winthrop University. I did a lot of the calculations in terms of calculating some of these increases, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that to you and about what some of the economic literature suggests about economic impact fees. So as I'm sure everybody is aware right now, The COVID-19 crisis has hit us pretty hard, and specifically in some very important sectors: leisure and hospitality, retail, education, and health. These are all sectors that have been hit especially hard by the COVID-19 pandemic and have seen, unprecedented decreases in business activity. Some estimates suggest that we may lose up to 100,000 small businesses over the coming months. And those are some pretty dire numbers if we're thinking about, our area and development in our area. When we approached this impact fee increase, we considered it as an addition to this COVID-19 pandemic and the additional stress that it would put on businesses who are either planning to move here or who could potentially move here in the future. So as David mentioned, I calculated on average a 108% increase in these impact fees. Just to be transparent about how I did this, some of the categories weren't directly comparable between the old fee schedule and the new fee schedule. So for those, I did the best that I could in terms of matching those and comparing apples to apples. So for example, on the old fee schedule, some of those categories were broken out by square footage, where we only had one number in the new fee schedule. So I took a simple average over those. As was noted on the slide, we calculated the increase for the Piedmont Medical Center bid for Fort Mill, because many of the medical facilities were based on beds previously, so the impact fee would be based on the number of beds those facilities would have, whereas the new impact fees were based on square footage. Even if you were to take out some of those medical facilities, you would still see roughly 100% increase in these impact fees. And I'm happy to dig into a little bit more of some of those numbers if you'd like me to, but I'm an economist, those interest me, they might not interest you. In terms of the economic literature that discusses impact fees, I want to note that we're primarily talking about these impact fees that are used for things like fire stations or roads or police stations, not fees that are used to assist schools. So, and I'm going to quote here from a couple of papers. These commercial impact fees have shown to decrease the price of commercial land, with a $1,000 increase in fees, decreasing the price of commercial land by $660. And here's a direct quote from some of the literature that discusses these increases. Fees for other traditional categories like roads, police, and fire seem to have stronger negative effects for commercially zoned land than on residentially zoned parcels. It's been found that these commercial fees, quote, repel jobs, with a $1,000 increase in the real value of these commercial fees, decreasing the level of private sector employment by 2,000 jobs. And once again, this is distinct from school impact fees, which have actually been shown to increase job growth and to increase the value of land. And so, I want to emphasize that we recognize the value of the projects that these fees are going to be put forth. We recognize that some of our analysis doesn't take into account the value that the community would place on new infrastructure, new fire stations, new police stations, and things of that sort. But we think in the current climate with COVID-19 that it's especially important that we consider how these additional fees might impact businesses. And so we think that these fees are best postponed until we have some indication that we're back on track economically. For example, in March of this year, the unemployment rate in New York County was 2.9%, which, as I'm sure most of you know, is well below the national average even then. And we're currently sitting at 12.5%, so almost an increase of 10 percentage points, which is substantial. And so we want to, at this point, try to lessen the strain on businesses and do what we can as a community to foster business growth and economic development. So once again, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I do have one question. This is Gwen Savage. Thank you so much for being with us today. The question that I have, in being a part of working towards impact fees for schools and bond referendums as well as for our community, how is it that the differentiation, help me with the correlation of how an impact fee for a school is different from that in a community?
Sure.
Municipal.
Sure. So, as I'm sure you're aware, these fees can be slated for different purposes. And investment in schools can indicate a number of things that are important to this business development, such as, a more educated workforce, higher quality schooling for children that might live there. All of these things that we associate in terms of economics of like good growth. So we call it human capital development. And so if the community itself is investing in human capital, we could see that being really beneficial for job growth and business growth. That's a well-educated community, a community that's going to be very productive. Whereas with these commercial impact fees, once again, I don't want to lessen the importance of these capital investment projects. However, with these commercial impact fees, these are direct costs to businesses. These act very similar to a tax increase for businesses. And so that can really deter investment in some of these cases. So it has to do with the way that these fees specifically interact with both the workforce and with businesses.
Thank you.
Of course.
Further questions?
Yeah, so thank you for getting up early this morning and presenting to us. I hate that we don't have the presentation prior to the meeting.
Me too.
Because it makes it real difficult for us to get enough questions together for you. So staff, if we can get that to us immediately after the meeting so we can start reviewing it, I would appreciate it. The second portion of my question, and again, you talked about the differences in the structure of what the impact fee looked like prior versus this one. So I would enjoy, the presenters, I'm not sure which one would be best, to explain a little bit about more the differences you saw. I saw the increases, decreases, but more in the structure. You talked about the hospitalization, the change from it being square footage was previously beds. Were there any other anomalies that you saw in there that were cause for concern?
I could start with that one if you'd like. So the way impact fees are calculated is there is a spreadsheet that the town of Fort Mills created that are used by developers and landowners to evaluate what their impact fee could be. The study that was recently conducted to renew the impact fee for the town of Fort Mill looked at things slightly differently. So while you may have had one category, you may now have 4 categories. Now, there's also a couple of categories that used to look at things other than square feet. Almost everything is square feet now, but not everything. So that's the main difference. And by and large, you had a lot of apples to apples, but where there wasn't, and I'd say close to 85, 90%, there was an apple to apple, but where there wasn't an apple to apple, what Nick has done is he's been able to find an equivalent that's for your comparison. And the big one there, that's big change, was the hospital. They went from beds to square footage. That's really the only one that I can think of that used to not be done by square footage. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
One more example of that, which isn't actually included in this average, is that for colleges and universities, previous impact fees were assessed based on the number of students, whereas now they're assessed based on square footage as well. And I didn't find a reasonable comparison for that, where I could try to essentially normalize and say, okay, for a college or university of this type, the impact fee would be X, now it would be Y. And so in that instance, I left that out of the calculation.
Yeah, but that's a great example.
I'll point out to you that even the college, as he's referring to, and some of the others, when you are able to see that larger spreadsheet that is called the direct comparison, that larger semblance of categories is there, and you will be able to see those. We just pulled a few for the PowerPoint, but all the categories that David and Nick have mentioned, everything that was related is in that spreadsheet, and you'll be able to see it compared with the old fee schedule and the new.
Perfect. Well, and your point about universities is interesting, because we know colleges and universities in themselves are going to have some challenging times as well with the financial implications of COVID. So that's something good to bring up. While we don't have it here, it's certainly something on the horizon that maybe at some point we would like to have. All right. Thank you very much.
Excellent information and well documented, easy for us to understand. I too look forward to receiving a copy of the presentation so that I can make notes on it and provide further discussion items with staff. Any further questions?
And for the presenters here today, I'm sure if we have individual questions after the presentation, you guys are certainly available.
We can channel those through Leanne.
Yeah, that would be great. And I also wanted to say any of the bankers on the economic partners or any, we can even put you in touch with actual applicants that are trying to bring projects into the town right now, if that's helpful.
That's
And I'd be remiss to, I'd be remiss to say that I also wanted to say that we're very thankful for the help of the chamber. They also were a great voice in this discussion, and they also have submitted a letter for your review. We really appreciate their partnership as well to bring this together with all of you today.
And I would mention that Winthrop has very generously offered to help conduct research like this, not only on this project, but on future projects as part of their work with us on the partnership. And we thank you to them for delving into things that economists do like to look at. So thank you to them.
Love having Winthrop on board looking at the issues that we need to consider. It's a very, very nice touch for us to be able to have that. Thank you so much. With that, any further questions for the Economic Development Partnership? Hearing none, Davey, would you read the public comment? We will do this differently than it is organized on our formal agenda, because it's important for us to have the public comments as we are addressing each of the issues. So, Davey, if you'll read the Economic Development Partners letter, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor, greetings, Mayor and council members. We hope you are all doing well and staying safe from COVID-19. The Chamber appreciates your willingness to serve the public, especially during these extremely uncertain times. Such times are surely difficult for local governments in sustaining sufficient revenues to provide the quality services citizens and businesses have come to expect and demand, as we assume the town of Fort Mill is no exception. Chamber does not intend to make your job or the staff's work more difficult, and we don't want to appear to second guess your decisions. However, we respectfully ask that you reconsider the impact fees and the fee schedule that was approved last month. We also understand that some town council members have said they were unaware of the new fees' aggressiveness when voting for the ordinance. Those council members have also indicated that they are open to re-examining the fee schedule and its potentially negative impact to businesses, and we also appreciate that. While it is a legitimate question as to why the Chamber didn't speak up at the public hearing or earlier meetings when the fee ordinance was proposed, the answer is we simply didn't hear about or expect such actions on a business issue of this magnitude. When the Town Council considered the implementation of impact fees 5 years ago, early on, the Chamber, along with the Fort Mill Economic Partners, known then as the Economic Council or FMEC, voiced strong opposition to the fees due to concerns about their potential effect on future development in Fort Mill. The impact fees ultimately approved in 2015 included a schedule that was much less harmful to businesses than what it could have been. After 5 years of impact fees in Fort Mill, we're guessing the overall assessment is that they did not substantially deter business development. This too is good news that should be applauded. However, COVID-19 has significantly changed our world and the economy. In addition to its many distractions, the virus has essentially put an indefinite damper on national, regional, and local economic growth. While the town of Fort Mill certainly needs to remain financially viable moving forward on impact fees of this degree, this time doesn't seem a good approach. Based on the fees estimators we've seen for 2015 and on the new schedule, it appears that the fees are significantly higher. We understand that the Fort Mill Economic Partners, FMEP, is sharing with you some research and more specific data on the impact of the new fees. By the way, the focus on both the Chamber and FMEP remains on the effects on businesses rather than residential, and we realize that fees on one also affects the fee on the other. As was the case in 2015, the Chamber is collaborating with FMEP to request changes in Fort Mill's new impact fees. The Chamber is in general agreement with FMEC's reasons for change, with the specific overarching concern being the potentially long-term negative effects the higher fees could have on Fort Mill's competitiveness and tax base. That obviously could not make your job much That obviously could make your job much more difficult in the future. Thank you for your consideration, for considering the Chamber's perspective and request, and we thank you again for your service. Sincerely, Mike Gettings, 2020 Regional Board Chair, Mark Alley, 2019 Regional Board Chair.
Thank you, Davey. Even though we're not filming this morning, and I do not believe we provide audio for our second monthly meeting, which is really supposed to be designed as a workshop, I do think it's important to note that this particular issue did go before the Planning Commission prior to coming to Council. The impact fee study is a requirement that the town must go through, so the timing was selected based on our requirement. And then, yes, we did discuss briefly as a council prior to making the decision. I personally am ashamed that I did not ask enough questions to provide the context of the amount of increase that would have occurred on the business front. Personally, the first go-round of impact fees, I did not vote for them. I believe Larry did not vote for them either, based solely on what impact it might have for our business community or those wishing to do business in Fort Mill. However, once we were able to apply the discount rates, it became something that was not only agreeable, but has provided the town with resources to increase or at least maintain the services that our community expects from us. So when we made the vote, it did not seem to be such a large increase, but rather one that would continue to move us forward. Again, I'm ashamed I did not ask enough questions, and I promise you that won't happen again. With this information, I think the best course of action is for staff to take a look at the presentation from Fort Mill Economic Partners, the information provided by Winthrop, and talk to our council again on the types of increases that we are seeing. COVID does present unique challenges. If we were still in a thriving market, perhaps this would not have been as devastating. I think, too, we need to understand clearly, we talk about the impact of small businesses, but then the information that we look at is all large business. It is not small. So I think that I would like to know the breakdown of what actually is the definition of a small business, either square footage or employee, and what is the definition of a large business. David Bust, you mentioned you could provide us with a number of folks that have been looking to site in Fort Mill. I would love to get that. I think it's really important for council to understand, because we typically don't get that information, and it would be nice to know in volume what we're looking for. We cannot continue in this community without those businesses that support the good growth in our community. We just can't, and we need to do everything we can to help them, not harm them. So that's a personal opinion, but I'm entitled to one. So with that, Davey, would you please get staff together and let's talk about how to proceed with considering what action we took, what impact it is going to have, and how we might reconsider what we need to do based on the timing of COVID and the businesses that we certainly do not want to turn away from our door.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do that.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add a point too. We need to, I feel like, in my opinion, we need to lean more on what was presented to us today and the people and resources that we have available. Mm-hmm. It's Fort Mill Economic Partnership, and we didn't do our part in partnering with the resources that the town has. And thank you all for bringing that to our attention. This partnership is something that has grown over the last few years while I've been on council. And it's something that is a great resource that we need to lean on you guys more. You are the heartbeat for us. You're the doctor that puts the stethoscope on the heartbeat of the economic growth in Fort Mill. So we appreciate the resources that you guys bring for us. And I promise as mayor to ask more questions and lean on you more as we move forward in these type of decisions that impact not only ourselves, but impact your business. And
that was Freudian. as mayor. That was Freudian.
Did I say mayor?
Yeah.
I'm not mayor. As Mayor said.
I was sitting here going,
Mayor Savage.
wow. That's good.
Heck no. I'm not going to divorce me today.
No.
No. But thank you all. We appreciate it and look forward to further discussions on this matter.
Yes, and thank you, Lisa. I'm just teasing.
Yes. So.
I agree. We certainly are blessed to have a group of folks that solely place their efforts on ensuring good business growth within our community. And we should view this as a value. And hopefully we'll continue to grow in that relationship. So thank you so much.
I have a comment.
Yes, please, Larry.
I'd like to compliment the Fort Mill Economic Partnership on the presentation. I think you made a good effort to explain why you want it back to the old rate. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Ronnie, any comment? Trudy?
I had to unmute. No, I have no comment, but I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. Trudy? All right. We're going to move forward. Thank you again, Fort Mill Economic Partners. We are very grateful for your presence, your information, and your timely bringing this to the forefront so that we can make reconsiderations. Thank you so much. All right, we will move to old business. There are no old business items on our agenda today. New business item number 1, council to consider an emergency ordinance extending the effective date of the face requirements within the town of Fort Mill. Chris Pettit should be able to join us via video. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on
I'll
the floor.
second motion.
Okay, thank you. Chris, are you with us?
Yes, Mayor. Good morning. It's been this month, Council, I think on July 6th, enacted an emergency ordinance requiring face coverings in town. At the time that was enacted, it was done so for a period of 30 days, and the 30-day time period would expire prior to Council's next meeting. Therefore, staff brought it back to you this morning for reconsideration. I will note that the ordinance that was provided to you has left a blank where we talk about how long of a period of time we will be extending this. So if council chooses to move forward with extending this, we'll need to include in your motion the time period for the extension. Again, it was done so for 30 days initially, and per state law, you can do it for a maximum of 60 days. Other than that, there has been no change in the wording of the ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sure. Last week while on vacation, I asked that we take a look at the numbers, and I haven't received anything. Davey, did you get something from Chuck?
Yeah, I actually spoke with them, Mayor, Friday, and the numbers they provided me were from Monday through Thursday of last week. Individual cases for 29715 zip code on July 20th were 74, July 21st was 55, July 22nd is 93, July 23rd was 61. The numbers had not, they come in as of the next day. So those are the numbers they could provide me for that week, individual, just for 29715 zip code.
And those are new cases?
Those are new cases per day.
Wow.
And then the DHEC, if you go to their website, it does provide an accumulative rolling count of a 14-day period for per zip code, but they are sent out every Monday. So as of the meeting this morning, DHEC had not posted those numbers yet. So
okay.
They will provide you the 14-day cumulative total.
And who was Chuck that you referenced?
Chuck Haynes is the emergency director.
Okay, I just need to.
I did not speak with Chuck. I spoke with Tina Davis. Chuck was on the call. So she explained it to me and provided these numbers for me.
Thank you.
I think these numbers we're getting, I had tests, by the way, about 2 weeks ago, and came back negative.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, but I found out there, after some question, if I had a positive test, and so many weeks later you get another positive test, you keep getting tests, you get a negative. Each one of those is counted as a separate case. I could represent 5 different people if I had had 5 tests. And I just question some of these figures we're getting. I don't know how to get correct figures, but they do raise doubts in my mind.
I will say, I'm not sure that our nation was prepared for a pandemic to be able to do it in a very scientific, structured way. And so they are learning as they go too. I don't disagree with you. Do we have any details as to the difference between the numbers in areas with mask versus no mask? Do we have any other kind of data information?
We do not have that kind of data.
And I know we've got some public comments coming, but to the point that we made in the previous discussion, did we have any public comments relating specifically to masks that we should take into consideration prior to moving forward with any vote?
We do not.
Yeah, we did not receive any.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean I didn't receive emails. I got one this morning, as a matter of fact. It's about 50-50 on the emails from those that do not believe that the mask provides any protection, and those that believe the mask is the only thing we know to do, given the circumstances. So this is a very difficult task. I have read and seen news articles, which I've tried not to read the news or watch the news at all. It's aggravating, where people are actually coming to physical fisticuffs over wearing of masks. And the intent of this council was never to put anyone in jeopardy, but rather, because we have no other avenue other than social distancing or closing down again, of trying to help. It seemed to be one of the least invasive practices to employ in our town, in our community, and other communities. And I'm even seeing states now that are asking for masks to be worn in the entire state. So this was not about personal rights or knowing that the numbers are good or bad. I don't think anybody does know. And Larry, I agree with you. It's ridiculous that we're months into this pandemic and we can't seem to get a handle on what the actual numbers are. And that's not within our purview. We don't have scientists on board with the town. We're citizens just like everyone else. Personally, I would like to extend the mask ordinance just simply because we have no other means of trying to help stop the spread of this virus. And folks, I know people that have had it. I know people that have died from it. It's not a hoax. It's not something that's drummed up, and it's not the flu. So from my own personal standpoint, and I am as conservative a human as you could imagine, but again, this council is a non-political council. We are not party affiliated with our service here. So to everyone that wants to send me a note about which side of the aisle I fall on, I do not. So, but I think if there's anything, it's an inconvenience at best to wear a mask. There are plenty of things written into the ordinance for those that cannot wear a mask. But I would like to think if you have a health issue that you can't wear a mask, that you probably aren't going to put yourself in a public place anyway. That seems to me to be adverse. I'm risk averse, and that doesn't work for me. So I'm allowed to make a motion, and I'm going to make a motion that we extend the mask ordinance for another 30 days as we watch and hopefully begin to see a decline in the number of cases.
And from Mr. Pettit's comments, it sounds like we need to put a specific date to that. So an additional 30
days would be from August the 6th to September the 6th. Is that what you meant, Chris? It needs to be calendar instead of just a number of days?
We just need a number of days. It doesn't have to be specific to what date necessarily. We just need a time period to extend it because we left that open for discussion. So if it's 30 days, then that's fine.
Additional 30 days.
Yeah, that would be my motion.
I would second that. And just as a
I'll second
comment
that.
too, we just finished an economic review from the Fort Mill Economic Partnership. And I think this ordinance is also in support of many of our business partners in the community that have also made mandates for their businesses, whether it be on a national or a local level. This is one way we can help support what they feel like they need to do to keep not only their employees but patrons safe too. That's one of my reasons for doing this. Isn't just for the individual people, but also to support our economic partners. So,
Agreed.
Okay.
Ronnie, comments?
Done.
Trudy?
I don't,
Okay. Larry, any further comments?
No,
have,
Okay, the motion and the second on the table are to extend from the end of this ordinance date, which would have fallen somewhere around August the 6th.
thank,
Yes, ma'am. Trudy? Another 30 days on the mask ordinance. Lisa, how do you vote?
in favor?
Ronnie, how do you vote?
Against.
Against. Larry, how do you vote?
against.
I vote for.
Yes.
Trudy? Yes. All right, that's a 3-2 vote as we are missing 2 council members.
vote for.
I believe that carries the vote for another 30 days. Thank you all for your efforts as we continue to muddle through this with the rest of the country. Public comments, I believe this is at the time that we have one more public comment. 2 more public comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's right. Got it. So, Davey, if you'll provide those to us.
Okay, Mayor, this public comment comes from Tracy Simpson, who resides at 114 Sharon View Street, Fort Mill, South Carolina. Fort Mill has for many years billed itself as a progressive city. We want to represent ourselves as a progressive city to attract new residents and business. We want our public space to appeal to our human values: love, respect, progress, truth, a sense of pride we can all agree upon. Confederate Park is an embarrassing blemish on our beautiful town. Monuments within it represent the antithesis of these values to celebrate in Fort Mill. Unlike many, I am strongly against mere signs that recontextualize the Confederate monuments in Fort Mill. Recontextualization isn't possible in these types of monuments because it assumes that oppression of the African American community is a thing of the past. Signs presuppose that everyone can experience these spaces without the pain of the historical reminders that a great number of influential white people believe African Americans should consider themselves as second-class citizens. Both years ago and clearly by lack of respectful action still today. Respectfully, my questions to Town Council: will you be voting to overturn the Heritage Act? Will you work to move and preserve Confederate monuments to private space? Will you repurpose the public space, which is currently Confederate Park? What are your specific plans to address renaming the following streets: Confederate, Calhoun, Lee, Jackson, Sidney Johnson, Morgan, Forrest, and Leonidas or...
Thank you.
And Mayor, the second one was ridiculous from Dave Spratt White, who resides at 111 Fairway Drive in Fort Mill. Comments to Town Council on Confederate Park in Fort Mill. A recent edition featured a long article on comments to this council about the monument in the town's Confederate Park. A number of citizens object to the name of the park and the statues there. They say the park and the statues glorify treachery, traitors, and slavery. Embarrassing where such a park is permitted to exist. That is their, here is mine. When Captain Samuel White gave the land for the park, and he and the citizens of the tiny town of Fort Mill began erecting those statues in 1891, this area had recently been completely sneezed. Its economy had been wrecked. Much of its population had been killed, wounded, diseased, just disappeared. What was left needed to be reorganized and redirected. More than anything else, that took leadership. I believe the purpose of the park and the statues was to convey the survivors the sense that defeat in war was not the end. The returned soldiers, the women, former slaves, and the Catawba Indians were told by these monuments that their efforts were appreciated, that they were good and worthy people, and that their suffering would not be forgotten. Captain White organized and built the manufacturing company chartered in 1887. He and others continued to operate their farms. They brought the economy back. There was no Marshall Plan. There was no economic stimulus from. There was no sweat, taking, and courage. There was only sweat, taking risk, and courage. Captain White did not own. The names listed are the names of the families who did. These families are still here in Fort Mill. Names like White, Springs, Culp, Spratt, Sutton, Kimbrell, Epps, Patterson, Massey, Potts, Harris, and on and on. The same family name, Fort Mill's streets, businesses, its housing developments, and throughout its history. Now, we told these families of the progeny of traitors. Our citizens of today are embarrassed by these people. The fact that these past generations left our present citizens with the Greenway, where the farms once operated, Elisha Park, where the Fort Mill Manufacturing Company began, and perhaps the state's finest public school system mean nothing. That terrible little park and its dreadful monuments must go. Walter Elisha, president of Springs Industries and the man behind the 7 modern bronze sculptures in Fort Mill, dedicated one of those sculptures to respect for history. The effort to destroy the park, an important piece of this community's history, shows how quickly the lack of such respect can get.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Spratt White, for bringing comments to this particular issue. I think at this point it's important to note I've received a couple of questions that we've made decisions in regards to the park. We have not. We continue to gather information and look at options, alternatives, and reasons for changes. As a council, I would like to at least acknowledge that we are continuing to be extremely thorough in the way that we look at that. This is not an easy decision. It is not an easy topic because there are so many different perspectives. However, I would note openly that park has existed for 129 years. That's a long time. It certainly was here before I was, before my parents were, before my grandparents were. So I do think, that the context is critical in how we look at that particular park. And I look forward to continued discussions on what's the best thing, if anything, for us to do. So with that, thank you, Davey, for doing that. We do have 2 executive session items for today's council meeting. Please note that council may take action on executive session items listed on the agenda when they come back into public session. Executive session item number 1 is receipt of legal advice pertaining to town-owned or controlled property, and executive session item number 2, receipt of legal advice regarding potential claims or lawsuits. I will need a motion to move into executive session and a second.
I move that we executive.
I will second.
A motion, and Lisa has seconded that. Trudy, how do you vote?
I vote yes, we move into executive session.
Thank you, Ronnie. Ronnie?
Yes. Sorry, I had it
Larry?
muted.
I understand.
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And I also. So thank you very much. It'll take about 5 minutes for our staff to set up executive session for us. Thank you all for your time this morning. Motion to return to regular session.
I'll make a motion, we return to regular session.
Second.
All right. Trudy, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Bonnie? Ronnie?
Off mute.
Okay. Larry?
Vote yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. It's really difficult to stay within the parameters of legal when we can't hear each other. Okay, let the record reflect that no vote was taken in executive session. Hello? I don't hear anything. Okay. With that, we are moving towards adjournment. There was no vote taken in executive session. Larry, do you have anything for the good of the whole?
No.
Trudy, do you have anything for the good of the whole?
No, ma'am, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronnie? Lisa?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
And for once, the only thing I would like to do is to extend my thanks to all of our staff that continue through COVID and other circumstances to keep our town running and in good shape and well protected. The heat has been incredible, with the heat indexes being over 100. To know that these folks put themselves on the line, wear masks, address serious and critical situations, do everything in their power to keep our community the one we all love. So thank you so much. And please, this week's supposed to be hotter than last. So please take care of yourself personally. It would not be the same without you.
Okay.
So thank you all. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make that motion, we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Cook and a second by Mr. Huntley. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All, Trudy?
Yes, adjourn.
Thank you. All righty. With that, thank you all. Have a good week.
Thank you.